This is Jackie's first meeting. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you, Jana Thomas.
I've received apologies from Dan Benjamin. Dan is meant to be joining, or could have been joining us for the first time tonight. She's our new Director of Children's Social Care. And Ian Williams, the Acting Chief Executive, Lisa Aldridge, Kaha Ran, Marcus Barnett, and Pauline Adams. Those are the apologies that I've received for tonight. Christine, do we have any more apologies at all?
Those are the only ones I've received.
Thanks very much. The focus of this quarter's meeting is on poverty as a driver of crime and violence in communities. So, sorry, I've got some of my colleagues talking here. Sorry, everyone. Sorry about that. The focus of this quarter's meeting is on poverty as a driver of crime and violence in communities. And tonight, our approach to this is from a system thinking perspective, which recognizes that poverty reduction and building resilience will require us to think in a different way, thinking that leads as a system and not from a service or individual perspective. We know that poverty is a wide-ranging issue. It's not about not having enough money to spend on daily needs alone. There are many facets to the work the council and partners are doing on poverty reduction in Hackney. And a recent analysis by the GLA show rates of violence affecting young people are highest in the boroughs that are deprived in multiple ways, such as having long unemployment, low educational attainment, high numbers of residents on universal credit, high numbers of mortgage non-payment, more people earning below the minimum wage, and higher estimates of rough sleepers. So all these are important to us, and this is why this topic is important to us, not just to discuss it as a council, but to bring our partners in the community together, talking about this. And tonight, this meeting will give us the opportunity to think creatively about the relationship needed across the system to address the complex, multiple challenges that residents face, the opportunity to build better relationship, and how this could make a difference for individuals and families. And finally, the barriers to working more collaboratively and how we can overcome any of these barriers. So can I just welcome people that are just joining us? And moving forward, I'll now move on to the second agenda item. I'll call on Sonia Khan and Jason David to set the scene for today's discussion. They will give us a brief presentation around poverty, delivering transformation change in Hackney. This is a piece of work led by the council's policy and strategic delivery team. Thanks very much, Sonia and Jason. Over to you, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think it was just me, but Sonia, if you want to chip in at any point, feel free. I guess really all I want to do is really provide some framing, I think, for the discussion that Reese and Yolanda are going to follow with. Let me see if I can present my screen. Do present now. That's my screen. got a few slides. Yeah. Oh, now it's working. Okay. So, can everyone see that?
Yes, we can see that.
Brilliant. Okay. I'm just trying to get it to slideshow. Okay. Might just have to leave it like that. I can't seem to.
Can you go to present, Jason?
Top right.
Top right.
All right. Oh, right. Ah. I was looking for a slideshow button on the left there. Fine. Thank you. That's helpful. So yeah. So I'm going to just say a bit about our approach to poverty reduction and set out some of the sort of challenges that we know exist and have been exacerbated over obviously with everything that's happened with the pandemic over the last couple of years, and then say really focus on, in terms of our approach, really focus on the ways of working and the changes we need to make to the way we lead and work to really make a difference, and hopefully in going through those, when you hear Reese and Yolanda talk about their experiences, it will really sort of highlight why those ways of working are important and what difference they'll make. So that's the kind of intention with this piece. So first slide is a bit of the context, I guess. So gosh, it does look like a horrendous list of really big challenges there. So you know, eviction ban ending, end of furlough, end of universal credit, continuing housing crisis, work opportunities limited, big changes in the economy. We know that mental health has really suffered over the course of the pandemic, particularly for children and young people. But you know, all of us have struggled, I think, at times with our sense of well-being. You know, decreased contact with family and the sort of networks that communities you know, wrap around themselves, and harming behaviours in terms of substance and alcohol abuse, again a symptom of the mental health challenges, potential harm to children and young people hidden in families, rising inequalities, and that really disproportionate impact on our marginalised communities and groups. And we've got to make significant savings and budget cuts to public services at a time when, you know, the need is really rising and there's so much vulnerability. And we've had a cyber attack as you know, that's really impacted us as a council. And, you know, we know that there are increasing number of residents in food poverty. So, you know, there's huge numbers of challenges, and that really, I guess, puts the challenge around poverty into some context. So moving on to the next slide. So our response, again, this is one of the key corporate challenges for us as a council. It's also a manifesto commitment. And we've developed a poverty reduction framework which focuses on 4 kind of operational activities and 3 ways of working, or key ways of working, that I think will make a real difference. And I'll go into more of the depth in those in the next slide or 2. So in terms of the sort of operational support, crisis support around income maximisation and debt support, so working with our advice providers and partners in the community to work with families around that. Our coordinated partnership response, so really looking at the material impacts of poverty, and as mentioned previously, food poverty has been a massive challenge there, and you know, leading on from the issues around the lockdown, and people using employment and not having secure employment. So that's been a real challenge. We're working really well with our community partners on that. Homelessness prevention and obviously always, you know, trying to get people into quality employment with all the challenges that entails at the moment with the changes in the economic situation and the plethora of kind of like less stable working as well, and ways of working. So that's what I really wanted to focus on. So asset-based community development has been a real focus for us, and I know we've got colleagues from Peabody here, and the Pembury Children's Community has been a real sort of beacon of that way of working in a community, and developing relational skills and trauma-informed practice. So really thinking about our relationships, but our relationships with our residents and communities, but also our relationships with other services and that collaborative approach. And developing tools to help service and partners poverty-proof their policies. So thinking about, as we have with health, thinking about, you know, the impact of poverty in all policies across all areas, really thinking systemically about all of this. So that's our overall response, and it forms a framework on poverty reduction for us. So poverty reduction really, you know, requires some fundamental changes in the way we work to really make a difference here. It's a complex issue, and it, you know, we can you know, get someone and try to get someone into work, help them with their CV and all that kind of thing that you kind of think is going to be helpful. But you know, families and communities and individuals have multiple challenges, and their lives are complex, and you know, that's not going to work if they have other challenges within their family that need support. And we really need to think about how we work holistically to address those challenges. So just working through these. So the first one up there really is about having that real understanding of how communities function and working with communities rather than doing two, and really thinking about a community development and community approach, enabling and not doing two, as I said. Recognizing the role of institutions and how they can be oppressive, and really thinking about also what, you know, the historical nature of that, and really thinking about how the power dynamics play out with institutions. So really having a much more rebalancing of the power with our communities, with our residents, and thinking about trauma and how the impact of trauma, particularly through the pandemic, and the disproportionate impact there's been on particularly our marginalised communities. So that's a key strand to our, you know, thinking about how we work differently, and recognition that we need to work more relationally. So whether at the community level, seeing things through the eyes of, in a human-centered way, through the eyes of the individual, through the eyes of the community, rather than thinking about it from our service perspective. So can we take things down to the level of the human being, the individual, and think about all of the services and interactions that an individual has with services, and how we work to make that work for them rather than work for the rest of the services. Leadership that's outward-facing, collaborative, that looks across the whole system. Again, not thinking from a single service perspective, but thinking about all of the service interactions that we have with our residents and our communities, and how we make those, we get this to be more than the sum of their parts, essentially. Really looking at things from that individual and that community perspective. And leadership that's open and inclusive and shows cultural humility, really recognizing that you know, we need to approach communities on their terms, and really think about the impact that we might have on them. So yeah, the leadership that's open, inclusive. And we've got a huge program of work around inclusive leadership, and looking at workforce development, looking at actually what does our workforce look like? Do we reflect the community we serve? Those things are key, and this is not theoretical. This is really about drawing from experiences across the borough, and you know, we're working, like, there are community, there are organisations, there are services working this way, working in this way with our communities, with our residents, and really making a difference in the here and now. So resilience, what is resilience? So I think I just included this because it's a really nice picture against a lot of boring text, but it does, and it's, you probably can't see all the detail, but it's the World Health Organization's framework for building community resilience and well-being, and it talks about meeting basic needs, about networks of families and friends and community, about relationships, and all of the things that go towards building resilience for an individual and with communities. So I'll share these slides afterwards so people can get a good look at that. And so what is resilience? So it's something that occurs in the context of exposure to adversity, And this is, I think, a really helpful definition. It says the capacity of individuals and communities to navigate their way to the psychological, social, cultural, and physical resources that sustain well-being, and their capacity individually and in groups to negotiate for these resources to be provided in culturally meaningful ways. And there's a 7 C's of resilience that are interrelated qualities that are known to prepare and help young people in order to thrive. And those are competence, connection, contribution, character, coping, and control. And I think resilience is something we talk about a lot, and a lot of the time it's about our relationships and our connections and the support that we have around us. And that applies both to individuals, to communities, but also to services and to us in our work environment as well. So I think that's a really helpful definition of resilience, and I think that leads quite well onto the discussions that Reese and Yolanda are going to lead about their experiences and what helped them and what made a difference for them and what wasn't helpful. And hopefully you'll be able to make that connection between some of the things said now and their life experience as well. So I think that's probably enough from me. And I'll stop presenting once I can stop sharing. There you go.
Thanks very much, Jason. I can see you were running through that because of time, and thanks for setting the scene for that. And I'm sure as we go into the discussion, people will get more into this, what we are discussing today. Oh, thanks, Sonia. I see there was a question from Rasak around homelessness, and I can see Sonia has already put a link there. I can say, Rasak, that I'm proud of the work Hackney is doing when it comes to homelessness. So I think you find that useful. And as well as that, in terms of progressing the poverty reductions work stream, Sonia has also put another link there. So please feel free to or click on that for more information. And I'm glad the slides from Jason will be going out. It is quite important. Thanks very much. On that note, I'll now move us on to the agenda item 3. And this is where we're going to hear from 2 young people, Reese and Yolanda. Yolanda, it's good to see you. Yolanda is one of our very active young people in the borough. So Yolanda and Reese will now take us through or share their stories with us. And this will be an opportunity for us to hear, in particular from young people firsthand. And I hope we're going to take things away with both going to be focusing on what has made their journey harder and at times what has made that journey easier. So it's going to be a balanced one. Yolanda, Reese, who is going to go first? How are you guys?
I'm good. Guess I might as well go first. I took the bait and took my mic off. I shouldn't have done that. I should have made Reese say how he is first, and then he can go first. But I'll go first. That's cool. Reese, do you want to say how you are quickly, or you want to wait until?
Yeah, I'm fine. I guess what you said was completely true. You took your mic off. You're going first. So.
Cool. So, as said, my name is Yolanda. I'm going to start off with where I currently am at the moment and work my way backwards, just so that you can see the transition of where I started from and just how much it kind of helped. But I'll lead up the story. It'll make sense when I say it. So cool. My name is Yolanda. I am a self-published author. First released my book. Well, it's my only book. I released it last year, November last year. And since then, I've kind of been working on actually building up my business, website, a legacy, I guess you can say. Besides from all that, I also work with the youth department at Hackney CVS, where I'm involved, currently doing an internship with Account Hackney, which is a police monitoring group. I know we've got Andy Port on the call. I know you've seen a lot of me, so you know who I am already, but good to see you again. Yeah, it's a police monitoring group where we basically scrutinize the police for any injustice or wrongdoings that's going on within the area. But that's not all that we do. We also help to teach young people about knowing their rights and just kind of giving them that confidence to, likewise, giving them that confidence to just know how to deal with situations when facing the police and just in general. Also, I'm part of a bigger movement called Politically Black, which is just about dealing with the injustice in the community, systemic racism, anything that kind of fights against ethnic minorities within Hackney. I'm all involved in that kind of stuff. I'm also about Cool Down Cafe, which currently is taking a bit of a pause at the moment, but that basically helps young people within the area with their mental health, basically building up resilience and bettering their well-being. Again, that's part of what my book is about as well, so that's right up my stream. So to tell a little bit about myself and how I actually got where I am, I actually wrote a whole bit of notes, so forgive me if you see me looking down, and also I probably won't even stick by it. But to start with, my first interactions, services in Hackney would have been in secondary school. So I went to, it was called Hackney Free at the time. And to be honest, I'm quite annoyed that they changed it to Urswick, because my head teacher at the time, he used to rant and rave about the history of Hackney Free, and I felt proud to be a part of that history. And as soon as they left, he changed it to Urswick. But so it goes. Anyway, I went to Hackney Free. My first interactions with services was the school therapist at school, and it was a referral service. So it's not something that I genuinely wanted to do, but I was lucky that I actually genuinely liked the person, the therapist that I was working with. I was quite scared, to be honest, if I'm honest, because it's not something that we're comfortable doing as a young person, going to see a therapist or talking about what's going on at home and all things like that. But she made it very comfortable. It was a place where I could just kind of be myself, and it gave me a more positive light on the services that are available, because all I could remember was how my mum had to deal with like the council, and my grandparents had to deal with the council, and my overall view on services in Hackney, even at a young age, wasn't always the best. But she kind of gave that a different direction. However, if I can remember right, the funding at that place, at Hackney Free at the time, got cut, so she couldn't actually continue her job, and there was no kind of follow through. So I was kind of just left. So we started all this great work, and there was literally no follow through. There was no referral onto that to kind of help continue the work. So I was still dealing with the situations at home and not really having that support that I genuinely needed, even though it was a school teachers that kind of referred me to get that support. Anyway, I felt like that should have been followed through. However, being a young person, you're not really thinking. It's only as I got older that I reflect back and think maybe that should have really been followed through. But as a young person, if I'm being honest, I didn't generally care that I didn't get followed through. I didn't care about going to see a therapist. No one really does at a young age. However, looking back, it did generally help. So I am thankful that my school did refer me. But as I said, it would have been nice to get that kind of follow through onwards. Going on to the next kind of part of my journey, while I was in school, I was volunteering at a place called Rising Tide, which is actually, it's in Hackney. It's where Picture House in Hackney is. I'm trying to think of the old name. I think it was Ocean. Slightly showing my age, but yeah, Ocean. Saying that like I'm really old, but yeah, it was at the back of Ocean, and I remember helping out doing like just voluntary service there when they had their youth programs running, doing a lot of music programs, photography. That's when I kind of first got into photography. I done a photography course there, and done a events, I think it was events management or events programming, something like that course. did quite a bit there, and I also went to help volunteer and help other young people coming through to actually do that course as well. However, again, the funding had been cut, so those services that were available couldn't continue. So for myself, that was like an early indication that there isn't a lot of support for young people in sectors that aren't necessarily perceived as your go-to career option. So things like being a doctor, being a lawyer, the funding was all on that side, but being more creative, being just that free kind of young person, the funding just kept getting cut. So that, as I said, was a clear indication from young that the people who make decisions didn't genuinely have young people at their heart. But it was also what inspired me to actually want to get into youth work and be that kind of support for young people, because I saw the effects that it had on the people around me who once had a place, even though it wasn't a youth center, it felt like that. We could go there, we could find like-minded people, we could find people who generally just are fun to be around. And also the people that work there, even though they were working there, they would treat you like you were someone, like you were human. They wouldn't see you as you're a young person, loud and rowdy. They see you as a human being, basically. So the effects that had on the people that I met there, just to give a little story, one of the people that actually went there, and because of the funding getting cut and all that, he's actually no longer alive at the moment. Well, at the moment, he's no longer alive now. Unfortunately, he had an altercation where he ended up getting stabbed. But this is someone who got referred to the services by I think it was the young offenders team or the youth offenders team. And yeah, because of services that was available to him and that was keeping him off the roads and doing things that he actually loved had been cut, he wasn't able to obviously follow that through and continue that. And he ended up having to continue living the lifestyle that he was involved in before. I'm not here to tell his story, but that's just to kind of give an example of something that I've come across while going on my journey, sort of thing. To go into other bits of my story, as I said, that was like my first realization that kind of hit home to me that something needed to be done. I was still in college, well, secondary school, going on to college at that period of time. However, I've always had a passion to just want to help people. So my heart was generally drawn to how can I help young people? How can I get them out of this kind of situation from young, even though I was around the same age group as everyone that I wanted to help? But that's just me in particular. Moving on, because I know we are short for time to each of us. So in college, that's when I kind of got my first experiences of, well, not really first experiences, but a more developed experience of how the lack of support for young people there is. So in college, I lost my cousin to gang violence. He ended up getting killed actually on his birthday. And I remember how I felt mentally, like, even though I'm a female, I remember just wanting to ride out, as they call it. Like, that's the emotions that was going through. Like, there wasn't any other real support to say, all right, cool, you're going through bereavement at a young age. How can we support you? You're going through the loss of someone in this kind of manner. What can we put in place that can generally support you so that you don't get emotionally distraught from this kind of situation, and also so that you still can see that life is worth living? Because before I lost my cousin, I actually lost my aunt. So there was like 4 months before. So there was a lot of bereavement in that period of time. So yeah, as I said, there was no real like support for bereavement. And that's something I noticed a lot in school before I even got to college. I remember hearing people that not necessarily close to me, but they're people of people. So my people's people, basically, losing their lives to gang violence and other kind of situations like that. And just seeing the effect that it had on the young people that I know, and just seeing how much it stopped them from thriving the way that they should have if they had that kind of support from young. Like, that would have changed so much for them. So that's one element of it. As I said, it can have a very huge mental effect. So with all of that, my viewpoint on the services available wasn't good at all, that you can imagine. Not only from that side, but as I said, just remember hearing like my mum, I only spent probably about 5 or 6 years living with my mum before I was more with my grandma. But even with my mum had a 2-bedroom house and there was 3 kids and living in basically sharing 1 bedroom, two girls, 1 boy, 5 years apart from me and my brother. There's a year apart from my brother and my sister. We're all in a room. Like, just to even try and get the council to even give us somewhere bigger was a stress. My mum's still in that house now. My brother and sister still there now. Like, it was stress. But I ended up moving out of there because no space. My grandparents eventually got space. They were moving around a lot. But eventually we got a house with them. My granddad has epilepsy, diabetes.
Sorry, Yolanda, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just conscious of the time. And it is what you were saying are quite interesting, but conscious that we need to pass to Reese. If you don't mind to round off, then Reese can take over because of time.
No worries.
Thanks.
No worries. So yeah, as I said, the services with my grandparents alone wasn't even that good. But then my first personal experience was when I decided to take on my brother and sisters at the age of, I think I was 22, 23, and trying to foster care 3 children. Don't know why, I'm probably crazy, who knows, but I couldn't see them going into the services. However, these services were out of Hackney, so I'm not really going to go in depth on that. But in the process of doing all that, I actually became homeless myself at the age of 22, going through temporary accommodation. I was basically just left by myself, not really having the support, not knowing what to do. Can't even tell you how much debt I ended up in, but I ended up in quite a bit of debt because I didn't have that kind of support. And obviously that had a mental effect on me, had a very huge mental effect. A lot of it was mentally for me. There wasn't that kind of support. Even though I went out to NHS, tried to get support from them, it was, oh, refer yourself. But for someone who's actually suffering, that's kind of a silly thing to tell them to do, like, refer yourself. I don't even want to leave my house. Why would I want to go and do all of that and go through that process? So things like that. But then to wrap it up, in that whole kind of process, I found HCVS, which is in the youth department, we do like, it's all youth led, which kind of gave me that space to just be myself and work on things that I found I have passion in, but still be able to do work, get paid, and grow and develop, really. Because of time, I can't really go in depth on that side of things, but that service there.
Sorry, Yolanda, I need to go to Reese now. We are really pressed for time. Thanks very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
That's good.
It's quite, yeah, thanks. Reese, can I bring you in at this point? Thank you.
Sure. Knowing Yolanda for such a not so long, but she's been absolutely fantastic, and all the continued work she continues to do with the community, and her journey is extremely powerful. And I've known her for about 1.5 years now, and she's just absolutely fantastic. Pretty much the example of resilience, the strongest woman I know on this call, I think. So in terms of me, my kind of story, my first kind of interaction with services was probably when I was in primary school. And my mum was kind of looking after all of her siblings. She had like 6 sisters and a brother. And she kind of took responsibility for 3 of them in the same house as me and my younger brother. And I think she kind of lost sight of parenting me and my younger brother. And that was kind of used against her. And I think she kind of tried to get support from Hackney to try and get better parent support, better kind of peer support, additional mental health support, counseling, therapy, you name it, she tried getting it. And she kept on getting pushed back because she didn't hit the requirements or the entitlement, or she wasn't ill enough, or she wasn't practically dead to get the right support. So she started to begin dramatizing her alcohol abuse and substance misuse, and she started making things worse than what they seemed. And we ended up getting put into a tier 4 residential in the Cassell Hospital, which is very, very, very expensive. It's all about complex personality disorders and parenting, and it's like a mother and baby unit, but for adults. It's really weird. And I was told by a psychiatrist at I think like 8 years old that I'd probably try and kill myself about 10 times before 15. And I think being told that at such a young age is quite traumatic. And I look back and I reflect on it and I kind of laugh at it now. And after that kind of stint of 3 months being inside that, I ended up being in foster care. So I ended up getting introduced to the system. I was kind of placed in Romford with a family that weren't really anyone that I knew. It was complete takeaway from where I lived in Hackney, and the transition was, you know, extremely tough. I was assaulted in foster care. I reported it at a young age, and it was kind of thrown out through the fact that I was young and there's no way I would have got assaulted by a foster carer. And I'd still remember the same thing that happened today. And being through that, I was kind of when my introduction to a social worker, and through Hackney Social Services, that's when hell kind of started. And I guess it wasn't the first kind of positive interaction I had with them. It was very negative. So after that, I missed quite a lot of schooling from a primary age. I moved into secondary school. I eventually went back to my mum at around 13 years old, and we was on the at-risk register. Mum purposely put us on the at-risk register to get us additional support and help. And she kept on fighting the system to try and get help, and they just constantly turned her away. And she was someone that probably wasn't really parented herself growing up. And she wanted to try and do best by her siblings, but also for her own kids. Eventually, we ended up getting put on an interim care order and taken away from her and put into care. So my brother went to Ireland with his paternal grandparents and his father. I won't go too much in that. It's very stressful. But I was put into East Ham during 2012 Olympics when everything was chaos. Now, I missed around the combined 2 years of schooling. So I missed the entire of year 7. I missed most of year 9 and year 10. And the only kind of support I got was from my school. And that was Bridge Academy. And there was a woman called Lizzie Batterby, which is probably took the most strives in trying to improve my life and tried to improve my experience. And there was a head teacher at the time was Stephen Foster. And he was a massive influence on my life because he just told me to keep going, keep going. And that was my first positive. It was a school that picked up on a lot of stuff that I was going through, that supported me and put me in touch with counselling. Although the counselling in schools was not good at all, it was terrible, I still tried. Now, I kind of went off on that and I kind of like said, you know what, F the system. I don't want any help from social services. They were supposed to build bridges with my family. And instead, they burnt them down. They completely disregarded my mental health and my mental health, my brother. So having that horrific experience in school, missing quite a lot of schooling, my mum was struggling. She got diagnosed with lupus and she has, you know, severe complex mental health difficulties, and being through the court case proceedings for over 4 years took its toll on her. And, you know, she lost a lot of her personality and she was then put on medication, which kind of dehumanized her. And I guess kind of my kind of transition, I went into college. I did my level 3 electrics. I just kept my head down. I was very introvert. I didn't socialize. I didn't really stick with my friends. My friends were all out on the street selling drugs and, you know, going out and partying, which I guess that's pretty much the norm nowadays. And I never had that kind of teenage life. My kind of life was kind of caring when I got out of foster care to care for my mum and my younger brother. I eventually get put into temporary accommodation because I was from social services. I got support. And I kind of got moved around into temporary accommodation, hostels, temporary accommodation, supported accommodation, you name it. And that kind of raised a lot of barriers, because I was placed into one place in Bethnal-Green because they didn't have enough housing. Which means like £350 a week for rent. And there's no way I could have expected to go and get a job. So I ended up staying in that vicious circle of benefits and the system. Now, I never really accessed any mental health service because I didn't trust them because of what they'd done to my mum. So there was that no trust. There was that gateway that was completely burned down. I think I had about 7 or 8 social workers in the space of 4 years. So I guess that kind of, when it comes to experience, there's not that trusted person of communication that sticks with you throughout your life compared to when it was at school. You know, at school, I had the teacher that would look after me from year 7 all the way to year 10, year 12. That didn't happen with social services. So I constantly had a different changing point of support. And I was kind of like treated as a number rather than an individual. So I guess my kind of introduction to you know, services wasn't great. So I kind of, like I said, stuck my fingers up at the system and said, you know what, I'm doing my own thing. And I think if it wasn't for a woman called Shauna Murphy, who works in Young Hackney now, I wouldn't have been as engaged as I am now. I then started receiving support from Hackney Quest. Hackney Quest has probably been the most influential in my life. I know Colette's here, and Colette and Luke have been absolutely amazing with the work that they continue to do and the continued support that I'm getting. You know, I can't speak highly enough of them. And they kind of stuck around and kind of gave me more stuff to do. I had Luke Billingham, which consistently kept me on the right path. At the same time, I had my younger brother who started getting involved in bad behavior. He got kicked out of school, put into a Peru, you name it. From that transition from a Peru, his friend got murdered. He started doing county lines. He got gang involved. You can just imagine the story from then, you know, and there was no intervention or support from social services because there was no trust. There was no individual person there to support him through his journey. Now, my kind of whole thing is communication. I can't summarize in 10 minutes my life because it's very hard. I'm trying to give you like a whole broad basis of what's going on. But we never had that dedicated support. And I've probably been through every service imaginable in Hackney, homelessness through to substance misuse. I don't really touch alcohol or drugs because of my family. But I tried actually applying to join the police force back in 2019, and I was declined because of my family history. And I tried making a change, and I didn't have much of a purpose. So I tried seeking that purpose, and I never got it, and I got declined, and it was quite a stressful time. And I think I got involved with meetings, Children Care Council meetings. I now work for Partnership for Young London, which is a policy and development strategy team, which are an amazing youth organisation. I chair up the Pan London Children Care Council, fighting for the rights of care leavers across London. I'm currently taking on a new role within policy and strategy delivery team, which is the Young Futures Commission, which I've been heavily involved with for the past 3 years. And I'm continuously trying to push for better experiences of young people in Hackney. I think Hackney is a change maker, and it should be someone or an organisation that we work together and build dynamic partnerships with each other, because one thing that really lacks is communication. And if different organisations work together, like HCVS, Hackney Quest, different organisations kind of partner up and make sure young people aren't falling through that gap. There is that net that young people keep on having to miss. There's a safety net should be there. And there's a lot of organisations out there that are doing amazing work. And I guess my kind of whole experience, if it wasn't for a positive interaction in school with that teacher and kind of a positive interaction with Hackney Quest and other organisations, I know Kofi, you're here on this call, Urban MBA. They supported me with business entrepreneurship for about 2 years, and COVID kind of took away from a lot of support from organisations. And I think that kind of built a lot of resilience, because I was so used to being let down by organisations and individuals, and I was constantly kind of used as like in a tokenistic way. Now I'm getting emailed left, right and centre from everyone asking me to do work, and I tell them no. You know, I guess the whole point of it is being through the adversities. I don't expect the system to be perfect. I think the system being the way it was, from my experience, has kind of built me to be resilient, and it's kind of driven me to try and make change. But it's also enlightened me to knowing that change is possible when we work together. And I guess I'll leave it back to that, Chair, and I'll pass back to you, because I don't want to take on more time. Yeah. So thank you very much for your time, and, you know, all good.
Thanks very much, Reese. That was... They said telling stories is one of the most powerful means that you can use to influence, to teach, and inspire people. I think listening to your story and Yolanda's story, people around on the screen in this meeting tonight must have learned quite a lot from you guys. And I thank you for being here, for sharing the stories with us. It's really, we are learning from your experiences, but importantly, I think walking from where you've come from to where you are today is quite inspiring. So thanks very much for being here, for sharing your stories with us. And yes, thanks, Jackie. They deserve a round of applause. Thank you. And we are moving to the next agenda item, and both Yolanda and Reese, I believe, are actually involved with this project. We're going to play a short film. I think it's about 5-7 minutes long. And this video is from the Systems Influencer Program, which is a pilot program that took place between November last year and early this year. It is a context of a place-based system transformation program and a joint working, which includes the Young Hackney or Trauma and Resilience or CAMS, HCVS, Hackney Young Future Commission, and Hackney Integrated Commissioning Work Stream. So it is a real collaborative work. And thanks, Yolanda and Reese, for your involvement in this project as well. Over to you, Christine.
I think it's really important for young people to get involved, especially in shaping policies that inevitably will affect them.
But whenever people or young people are trying to say something or have their voice heard, then most of the time people say it's either negative or it goes into criticism.
We all have a part in something, and we're not just seen as young people, and we can do like big things in a team and independently. It's like,
you know, the principle of kind of co-production should be rooted and embedded in everything that we do.
Children, young people and families need to be involved in shaping and designing the services we use. This is vital to ensure that the services meet our needs. We told Hackney that we want to improve our services for us and the wider community. Often decisions across the integrated health and care systems are made about us without consultation, or when it does happen, it's often too late or not done in a meaningful way.
Last year, we had a group of young people that I spoke to who kind of highlighted their concerns regarding the housing pathway in Hackney, like mental health services, and just like overall their feelings regarding like the Leaving Care team.
The Integrated Care Partnership, which is made up of lots of different organisations, decided to do something about this, and after many online discussions, it was decided that young people should lead them in the right direction.
The solution is to just speak and to just hear each other and listen and move forward from there.
So rather than wait and discuss all the details for months and wait for the pandemic to be over, they decided to launch an online pilot to test the new approach. They invited us, young people, to co-design the project from the start. For the pilot, they recruited 10 young people aged 16 to 25 from existing participation and engagement groups in City and Hackney to work with them as system influencers.
The meetings that you join or any sessions that you're involved in, what does that look like?
So typically I have a Monday meeting with my system mentors, and that's typically from 5 to 6 because that's when school concludes. But after that, we usually like set a task within that. We talk about how I want to progress with the project, and I'd complete some work during that week to have another meeting next Monday for review and just for extra support if necessary.
They paired us with 2 mentors per influencer according to our interests and personal goals.
So I'm mentoring David, and David has decided to attempt to run a project that would hopefully have some influence over the way that care leavers are allocated housing.
And with the support of 2 peer mentors.
I'm a peer mentor in this project, basically helping both the system mentors and the system influencers with communication and running workshops also for the system influencers.
This program could have just been done as system influencers and then the mentors, but the peer mentors being in the middle and that sort of point of contact, and them being like really close to age, helped with communication just being a lot more effective. I was quite bad at the beginning in terms of communication and keeping in contact with them. So peer mentors have been really, really essential in this. program.
With a coordinator and an evaluation team, we pulled it all together.
So my role is just making sure everything runs smoothly, make sure we get enough information for us to evaluate the project, to roll it out in the future, and make sure everything's plain sailing and very simple and enjoyable, and also for young people to get the most experience out of everything that they can.
Working in partnership, we set about to learn from each other. It was important we had some personal goals as well as sharing our ideas and knowledge.
Because I wanted to improve my leadership skills, my confidence. And also, I wanted to also improve on making independent projects as well that would involve people to get involved and to make the difference within the community as well.
We brought fresh ideas and perspectives that challenged the mentors while trying to agree a task that would challenge us and help us to achieve our personal goals as well as the project goals.
It's part of a longer term project, a longer term process where more and more young people feel confident and have the skills and abilities to challenge leaders, to challenge those people in power. We're not going to see it overnight, but I'm really confident that we're building a really good methodology.
This project is a stepping stone for bigger things. I definitely think these types of projects should be rolled out across England. I think everyone should have involvement with the system much more and decision making and meet the right people.
I know how bad it can be, so to have young people come in and actually affect those changes in a positive way, I'm hoping it does have the change that is needed and that is wanted by a lot of people.
I think it's very, very important for young people to get involved in activities. It can literally help you to learn new things and for you to actually get better at that specific skill.
So it's essential moving forward that we consult with young people, that we keep young people involved in these projects that are affecting them, because we wouldn't want a system that doesn't work, right? So we want to ensure that young people have a system that works for them and the people that work for that system know that it works for them too. So I think it's just essential moving forward that this continues to be the case. And I think with the outcome of this program, we'll see the brilliant work that, if I may say so, myself and so many of my peers are doing, actually creating change in the system that needs to be continued.
Thanks very much for that. I hope when we break into groups, some of those conversations we continue in our groups. I'm running 10 minutes behind, but I think we all agree with me that the story shared by Yolanda and Reese was worth it. I'll move on to Sagib Deshmong from HCVS. This item from Sagib, it is a sort of work that will again encourage collaborative working. And this is coming from our voluntary sector. Very proud of HCVS work. And over the pandemic, they have responded to the diverse community in Hackney. And this Sagib presentation will give us a brief outline of what HCVS has done around the newly published report, as well as update on my end. But having said that, Sagib, you've got 10 minutes or less. So over to you. Thank you.
Right, can everyone hear me okay? Yep, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Right, okay, so let's just start from the beginning. Yeah, I've just got a quick slideshow that I'll just run through. Okay, right, can everyone see that?
Yes, it is on the screen.
Okay, yeah. Great, thank you. Okay, I'll just start. Right, so Our MyEnds partnership came through the experience of lockdown. It was a difficult time for many organizations, for many communities, and it meant that we needed to reorientate, to pivot, to work differently in terms of how we engage with our communities. So it was built on the fact that we have a really strong, vibrant VCS community that works with children and young people in Hackney. It's based on the relationships, some of them which have been there for a decade, if not longer, but also the fact that lockdown brought us together, okay, in terms of what we needed to be looking at. This opportunity came through from the Violence Reduction Unit to bid in for funding for 2 years to develop a hyper-local program. We selected Hackney Wick and then started the process of working with local organizations. We developed a manifesto, working with the partners in terms of a key kind of focus for us. And I'm not going to kind of talk through this. You can see some of the narrative there. But what was really, really important for us was to understand that reducing violence couldn't be done without looking at the issues of race, class, and gentrification, and effectively looking at poverty, looking at the underlying issues that underpin the issues of violence in particular, and how lockdown has impacted on this as well. We see this as a big opportunity to develop a legacy. A lot of the time we talk about kind of placemaking exercises and creating a sense of place. But for me, with a background in kind of youth work and community development, we've got to start with people first. And crucially for us, it's about young people on the ground. So we set about building a partnership. One of the key outcomes that we needed to meet was around creating a stronger community networks. And what this was doing was building on the work that we'd all been doing as a CVS. So it wasn't anything new as such, but what we were taking was a hyper-local approach, saying, actually, what can we do with local groups, with residents, with young people in Hackney Wick? And when I talk about Hackney Wick, we're talking about the ward. So we're looking at the Wick area, Marsh Hill and Homerton in particular. And, we did our kind of research in terms of presenting the information. I mean, this presentation, for example, was used as part of the interview process for the VRU. We were clear that we wanted to take an asset stroke kind of strength-based approach that kind of recognizes the skills, the experience of not only just the community groups that you've got on the ground, but also the communities and the young people that we work with. As a youth worker, I've always gone to young people to get a sense of actually what's happening on the ground. What's the kind of intel? What are the things which are going on that we need to which we need to know about as adults, that we can give the support to them in terms of interventions. And the key thing was really just building on the strong and trusted relationships that many of the groups, such as Hackney Quest, such as a Crib, and then newer organisations such as Wickers Charity and Hackney Wick FC have got on the ground. So, again, one of the key things we wanted to do was just make sure that, as well as the partnership, we develop a strong network as well. So we're working with NCBI, National Capacity Building Institute, in terms of them providing what we're calling the glue that meshes the work together, that makes sure that the work that we do with partners is also working as part of a larger network to create a culture of accountability, right? We've had an investment from City Hall. We want to make sure that that investment we're accountable for, right? To the young people and to the communities that we work with in that area. So we're now in the process, we're in Q2. So we're continuing the kind of design process in terms of what the actual work looks like. And then really, going back to in terms of the network, it's about that kind of decision-making process. It's making sure that we created kind of a small pot of money based on the work we've been doing around Hackney Giving, which is in the impact report that was mentioned by Susan just now. And we're in the process of commissioning young people to do the auditing and researching around some of the drivers of violence. And we're using the methodologies that we've got in organisations such as Hackney Quest, and we've got Colette on the call today, and also the account group in terms of the amazing report that was produced looking at policing in Hackney earlier this year, and the kind of the way that young people led on that research is again something that we're fostering in terms of our approach to My Ends. And these are our partners. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far. You can see we've got a selection of kind of very local partners, and then kind of partners who are giving support. And we've got new and old partners as well. And it was very important that we had that kind of mix of organizations who've been on the ground for decades, sometimes in some cases, but also partners who are relatively new. And one of the things that we're also able to create is, as I kind of mentioned about the pot, is to support communities and individuals who come up with any ideas for startups and particular programs and initiatives. So to try and make it as organic as possible. And then really, I just kind of go through the rest of the slides. So what we want to be able to do is create stronger capacity that when there are issues, incidents, when there is a crisis, where there's been an act of violence, for example, that we have got organizations on the ground who've got the skills and the tools and know how to hold the police and other agencies to account. And through that, it's about, you know, the work we're going to be doing is developing the capacity of individuals and communities around calling the system to account. It's about doing some training, and that's where, you know, we're going to be working with small VCS organisations, working with the Prince's Trust, working with the East London Business Alliance in terms of their kind of their offers in terms of the programme. And then crucially, what we're looking at is developing youth work training in terms of the professional development of young people on the ground. One of the things we'd like to be able to leave as a legacy is a pool of qualified young people from Hackney Wick who know the area, who know all the kind of run-ins, have got kind of trusted relationships in the community, and a legacy that would really then kind of outlast the programme. Just in addition, as well as the youth work training, we're piloting the feasibility around doing a piece of work around counselling as well. And what we'd like to be able to do is to introduce concept of talking therapy into this space as well. So we're dealing with some of the trauma that exists, and that's something that's come out from sort of the previous work we've been doing. Yeah, so this is a little bit more about the kind of partners that we've been kind of working with. I don't really want to talk about these now, but this is our interventions, why we've kind of picked Hackney Wick, you know, in terms of levels of deprivation, the fact that there's a low level of qualifications, hence the work around sort of getting people youth qualified, getting counselling qualifications down on the ground as well. That's really important for us. Again, what we've looked to do is make sure there's kind of alignment around things like contextual safeguarding, multi-agency work. I presented around kind of My Ends to the gangs unit, to Young Hackney, etc. And we want to make sure there's kind of alignment across the different spaces that My Ends can intervene in. You know, we've done our kind of risk management kind of process in terms of some of the issues that we feel could take place, both around kind of lockdown, but also making sure that, you know, we do start to work with the whole community and recognize those individual pockets sometimes that can be hard to reach. Just the kind of number of activities that we're going to be looking at. So intergenerational work, developing the capacity, making links with the big local, knife crime awareness sessions, healthy relationship work, the Immediate Theatre, one of our partners, is going to be leading on. And we're hoping to have an annual festival on Mabley Green as well. So we're looking at next summer to do that, subject to lockdown. I just want to kind of just leave you with a quote from Colette Allen, who's on the call now, right? And this was in the Financial Times a few years ago. And what's really important about this quote, it makes the link between the violence that we see and the violence of poverty and the violence of a lack of aspiration, right? That, you know, what we cannot have is people who've got very separate lives. If we've got the levels of social inequality, that's a recipe for disaster. One of the first things that young people said to me when I started working in Hackney early last year was that they despaired about the fact that though many of them were born in the borough, that they could not ever think about getting their own place and being able to afford a house or a flat in the borough. And that kind of stuck with me. And then I saw kind of Colette's quote, and we made sure that we felt actually this is about working around the Mayans outcomes, but working to them in a holistic and an open way. I'm going to kind of just end it there and just take any questions. I'm really aware of time as well, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to present.
Thanks very much for that and for the update on my end, which is a fantastic, well, it's promised to be a fantastic project in the borough. And I'm sure you must have received communication from Pauline is not here today. She sent apologies from Principal Officer Pauline Adams around what you were doing, as well as from the lead officer, Maurice Mason, what you are doing on this project. We are talking about collaborative working, how it can complement what the council is already doing around this. And that conversation came out of a meeting that myself and the mayor had with Lee Peck. I hope we can take that forward in terms of the council involvement with that project. Thanks again. And I will now move on swiftly. It's got another video, and this time is us hearing from a frontline officer. So this is another short video. It is an interview with a member of staff from the Employment and Skills Service, where she talks about the work she and her service have been doing to support residents during the pandemic, in particular young people. And again, this is very important, as I mentioned before we start, before the start of this meeting, that we want to see the importance of relationships and how taking a human-centered, holistic approach can actually make a lot of difference for residents. Thank you, and over to you, Christine.
Great. Okay, so if you could introduce yourself and what work you do in Hackney.
Okay, so my name's Caroline Modest. I'm one of the area managers in Hackney West, which is part of the Employment and Skills team. So my role within the council is to access the local residents who are looking to upskill themselves, gain access to job opportunities, to training, education, and workshops, obviously, which will upskill people in order for them to kind of enhance the skills they currently have, or to make them obviously possible to start looking for jobs and training within kind of the local borough and surrounding areas. So I manage a group of employment advisors that will support those residents in accessing those opportunities, identifying barriers that they're facing, and basically dealing with all kinds of issues that they may be facing, trying to ensure that we're accessing the resources and sources needed for them to obviously kind of move on and try to get themselves into the right place where they need to be.
Brilliant, thank you. And what has your experience been of supporting and helping residents? And how has this been since March 2020 in the context of the pandemic?
Running up to the pandemic, obviously we were working in 3 local offices, so it was a lot easier to obviously maintain and engage with individuals. Since the pandemic hit last year, we had to adapt the way that we work very quickly in order to ensure that those most vulnerable are still being engaged with. And we had to change the way we're thinking about how we engage with individuals, what we need to do as a service to ensure that we are still offering some kind of delivery, be it we're doing that virtually for most of the time at the moment. So we had to really quickly think on our feet about how we do that, what our priorities were, and who those people were that we needed to support. So we still had an issue of people obviously not having able to access us, because they don't have virtual digital access. And then we still had vulnerable individuals that needed to obviously have engagement with individuals. So it was about us thinking about what our priorities were and how we were going to do that. So we had to rethink, change the way our teams delivered to ensure that we were catering for everybody, not just a handful of individuals, whether that be young people, older people who kind of didn't know about computers and how to access things and how to get online and to do things like applying for a job online. So we had to think about what we needed to do as a service and what we could do to make things a lot easier for everyone, to ensure that we weren't missing out on those people that really needed our support more than ever, obviously in a particular time. So that was something we had to really think about doing. Yeah.
That's really helpful. And can you talk a bit about what some of the residents that you've been in contact with and your team's been in contact with have been struggling with and needed help with? What's been the nature of some of the barriers that you described?
Okay, most of the barriers in the first instance was about the access to IT, because there are several households of people that only have one device within their particular household. And then when obviously schools obviously were working at home, so it was a matter of people trying to share one device between their children and themselves to either look for a job or for their homeschooling to be completed. That was the initial barrier that we faced. But the biggest challenge we probably faced was the kind of volatile people that needed to come to see us and wanted to have that face-to-face contact. And it was about just maintaining the contact with them as often as possible to let them know we're not in an office at the moment. However, we're still available over the telephone if they needed to talk to us about any issues. So those were the things that we identified were real issues. The access to IT, because we made as many contacts as we can to ensure that those who really struggled will be able to get access to that. But then something simple like calling somebody once a week to check in on them to make sure that they were okay and that financially they weren't struggling and they had food and they weren't struggling with, any kind of finances and debt. So those are the things that people really, really appreciated a lot more than just, I'm looking for a job. In the beginning of the pandemic, people kind of had a fear about going out and obviously were looking for work. Everything got locked down, so that wasn't their priority. Their priority was to think about, how do I survive? How do I keep my mental health in a good state so that I'm not going to be getting ill myself? Because there was also a fear about, if I become ill, do I go to a hospital? Am I allowed to go to a hospital? Will I catch COVID if I did go to the hospital? So we had to obviously maintain that contact and those relationships. So we put together a list of the most vulnerable people that we were working with to ensure that there was contact made with them at all times.
Wow, it's really clear that you're not just doing an employment service then, are you? It's a whole.
No, as part of our service anyway, our focus has always been about kind of employment, and the end goal is to try to get somebody into a job or to a training. But a big part of that is about developing our relationships, and that's what we need to do from the offset. If we aren't able to maintain the relationship and develop those individuals, people have no trust in us. So we have to make sure that is the part and parcel of our role. Build those relationships, gain the trust of the individuals so they will then be able to open up and tell you what the problems are and what we can do to support them. So if we aren't able to do that, we can't have the conversation following on from there to say, okay, let's now look at your CV and look at an application form. So it's very important, while we are obviously working with people and we are talking about employment and skills, we are taking into account individuals and treat them as an individual as opposed to they're just another person, they're just a number. It's very important that you build that relationship so that person feels like, I can call Caroline or whoever the advisor is and come back and say, this is what's happened. Thank you for that food voucher. Thank you for getting that for me. That's going to help me to then maintain my sanity for the rest of the week. So I know at least I've got a hot meal that I can survive on. And then I can obviously start thinking about, let's start talking about going back to work now. It's vital that you do maintain those and build those relationships with those individuals.
It's a really good example, because it's really, we were talking about is all the things that undermine your capacity to go into that job interview and feel confident. And if you haven't got enough,
if you aren't confident, if you've not had a hot meal for days, if you've not, you know, spoken to somebody, you're lacking that kind of engagement with individuals. Some people live in households where they're alone, so you do feel alone, you feel isolated, and with everything being shut down, who do you talk to? What can you do? It's very important that those people feel that we are a voice and there's someone that they can come back to, and we don't want them to just get a job and leave us. We try to maintain that relationship, so individuals feel like, I've got a job, let me call you back and see how things are going, and let you know that what you've done, you've really supported me, and you've maybe not just have helped them, but you may have helped the rest of the people in that household as well. Because if you're in a household, you help one person go into work, it then has a knock-on effect on the rest of that household. So it is a big, big thing that you do, and it is kind of sometimes something that people really appreciate us what we do, and they do appreciate that we do go out of our box and out of our comfort zone, because we have to do a lot of contact, a lot of developing relationships with other internal staff members and external partners to ensure that we're getting the right information and resources to those individuals.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you. We've got 2 minutes back, but we're still running a little behind. But it is now time to get into group discussions, bearing in mind what we've heard from Yolanda, from Reese, the setting the scene earlier on. And some of the things we want to, we say we want to achieve from this meeting tonight, which is around collaborative working, around transformation, how we can change the system. So I'm sure Christine will have the prompt for people, what we are looking to in your group. Christine, we do have 21. Okay, now we've got I saw 21 people. We got 19 people on the call. Do you think we go 3 groups or 4 groups? What do you think? Jason, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to just make a plea, really, that people, particularly service leads and those that are sort of directors and those that have influence, really think about the things they might do differently and the actions they might take away, or at least explore from the discussion, because I'm really keen that we've got some concrete actions that contribute towards our poverty reduction efforts and our efforts on violence reduction as well. So if you could really, try and get some actions out of the discussion, that would be great.
Thanks very much. Can I just say in each of the group what we are looking to do, because we're going to take this away, as Jason have mentioned, if it's possible to have a note taker that you can just send, not everything that has been discussed. I think we are looking for each of the group to have at least 4, to be able to provide 4 main discussion or item for us to take, suggestion, recommendations for us to take away in this area. So if we can have a note taker to either put it in the chat when you report back, or send it to Christine so that we can take that away. As I've said, we are looking at thinking, do you have any experiences of examples of ways of working that others may be able to learn from? What are the relationships needed across the system to address the complex multiple challenges that residents face, and better opportunity for or relationship building that could make a difference to individuals and families in the borough, as well as co-production, collaborative working. So, Christine, are you ready to put
I've put a link to the discussion groups in the chat because we didn't want to do it randomly to just try and get a allocation of different people from different services and teams and groups. But obviously a few people have left and some haven't come. So if people can just access the links on that document in the chat.
Yes, please, can people click on the link? The link is there. That will take you to
I can't hear nothing.
Hi, hello everyone.
Hello.
I don't know why I'm having, is it just me? Well, I thought I left.
Only you, Susan. I can't hear no sound.
Hi, everyone. I think we got the last group to join us. Yeah, why I'm conscious of the time, while we are waiting for others to join us. We've got 14 people here. I'm not too sure which group we haven't. Definitely, I'm in group 1 and we're all here. Can I just say we've all got, we need 5-10 minutes to report by. Can I ask the spokesperson in each group to just highlight 3 points? And I'll start with group 1. I think we got Jackie for group 1. That is my group.
Okay. Oh, I think my earpods are just going to die, so I'm going to rush very quickly through this. So in our group, what we talked about was the importance of relationships. So that's the importance of trusted relationships with both individuals, such as Reese and Yolanda, and across the system. And both Reese in particular spoke really passionately about the importance of those trusted relationships that he had across his lifetime that have made a real difference and continue to make a real difference. And sometimes we can forget about that if we're moving on jobs. So it's about really instilling that across the workforce, about investing in those relationships. And if we do move on, it's about really holding that and passing it on in a caring way elsewhere. So then there was the issue of a lack of trust that some people in the group felt was really critical to us working together to support children and families and the community coherently. There's lack of trust in both police and lack of trust in council services. And there was kind of more question than answer about how do we address that and how do we work with that. And that brought round the subject of advocacy. So, you know, for particularly young people, how helpful might it be that in their meetings with their social worker or their reviews or whatever the meetings that they're taking part in, that they're enabled to have an advocate from a trusted relationship with a trusted organisation that they felt safe with to champion their views and needs in those meetings. And if there's anything else from our group that anyone would like to chip in.
Thanks, Jackie. Can I go to group 2, please?
Just a quick one. I think group 1 and group 2 got merged together somehow. So me and Sandra were supposed to be in group 2, but I guess Jackie, we was involved in the same conversation. And I don't know if there is another group 2, but I know that we definitely were group 2. But I don't know if anyone else from group 2. Nope. So I guess it's group 3, councillor.
Okay. You're absolutely, yeah, I think probably the link. Yes, both Nicola, Reese, Sandra all were in group 1. Then I moved, in that case, I'll move to group 3.
I'm happy to cover this, Councillor. So we had Annie and also Deborah, who's had to leave us but has just joined the council, having worked in education as the systems leader on parental engagement, working in schools. So things we talked about were being struck by how hard it is to build trust when young people have seen family or parents have adverse experiences with the state, and looking, you know, not being judgmental then about why young people might not engage, or, you know, it's not just the young person, but it's their family and parental experience that will have informed that. I suppose staying with the theme of trust, the role of schools and individuals in schools was obviously highlighted as very positive. And actually, just linking to that, we were wondering about the MyEnd's work, which sounds great, and whether schools are going to be involved in that, and indeed something to, you know, consistently to think about when we're looking at place-based approaches is the role of schools in local areas, in locales, and part of that community, you know, part of communities. I know it's more complicated, secondary schools especially, but just thinking about that more consistently. I know it is something that that has been talked about before. Struck recent, Yolanda, just in your stories by how strong you come across as. And obviously I have met you both separately, so I wouldn't know everything that's happened that you've described. So that how you found strength, but also how I suppose we still see vulnerability. You know, the flip side is how we still see the whole person. But yeah, I suppose that was just something that was very, very striking. And in terms of some of the things you described, it's just regrettable that the support wasn't in place, particularly around bereavement, and then the sort of recognising that changing social workers and the impact that that had, and the lack of opportunity to build trusted relationships. For last 2 points that are linked to about co-production. So Annie was saying how it brought home the importance of co-production early in policy design and throughout, as well as the importance of co-production at an individual level and co-creating solutions. So it's good we heard from a frontline worker, although I appreciate there was a lot of information we had to go through. But, you know, that actually building trust, how you do that, but how you develop the skills to actually develop, you know, so it's not doing two. And then finally, thinking about the systems influencers and thinking about an action, just how can that become more consistently as a method adopted? It's something Jason and I are looking at for the next iteration of Young Futures, and we've got Reese on board now. But just as a resource, I believe it's being funded again, but may need, if other people were involved, may need, you know, buying into it. May not be scalable in that sense. We might, but it's certainly something we should be looking at across the system rather than reinventing the wheel. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sonia. Sorry, do you want to add anything? Anyone wish to add anything from group 3?
It was just Annie left now because Deborah's had to leave it.
Okay. Then I'll move to group 4.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm happy to speak about group 4. So we had Alid and Kofi from Urban MBA, I think, who's now still here, sorry. And Jeanette joined us as well from the crib. I think we've got probably an action to take forward in that Alid and I were talking about actually perhaps young people's voices aren't really heard in matters around the public realm, and that you tend to get the same faces talking about issues around the public realm. And what we know from the Young Futures consultation is that young people care about the public realm. Those things do matter to them, and the place they live, and how that's shaped in the future. So yeah, I think a commitment from Alid and myself to sort of make sure that they're linking into the work we're developing on the next phase of the Young Futures, which Reese will be working with me on. I'm really happy to have you on board, Reese, and we'll also be looking at how we engage and bring other young people into a sort of co-production group and develop that model so that we've got young people, we're not just going out to consult with young people when we think we want to hear something, but we've got young people involved in a sustainable way on an ongoing basis. So that's really exciting. Kofi and I also talked about the ensuring that we have culturally specific services, particularly around sensitive issues and challenges such as mental health. And he certainly mentioned an organisation that they refer to called Find the Balance. I got it right this time, not Mind the Balance. So I should be checking out them. And I just reflected on the work we're doing through the Improving Outcomes Young Black Men's Programme, and there's actually a strand on mental health in that programme, and we're currently looking at evaluating that work and thinking about where we go with the next 3 years of that programme to make sure it's really impacting systems change. So really, yeah, it'd be good to link into to what they're doing in that organisation and think about how that fits in with the work we're doing. And Jeanette, I think the conversation I had with Jeanette was a lot about the challenges that they faced. The crib have seen come to light during lockdown, and the issue of which was highlighted in the presentation of the resources and that we're going to be in an ever more difficult time around resources and funding, and we need to work smarter. We need to, when we engage with young people or residents, we need to get it right first time. We need to make sure that those services link in effectively around the person, as I said, in that human focused way, and that we're not, wasting resources.
Yes, Jason.
Thanks, Jeanette. yeah, so that's I think probably the three key points from the discussion we had.
Thanks very much, Jason. And I'm so sorry we weren't able to have our 5 minutes comfort break to make up time. I think people would prefer to leave early and have a longer break rather than 5 minutes comfort break. With what we've heard from the three groups, can I ask whether anyone has got any comment or anything to add at all as part of rounding up today's meeting? Any? Reese, do you want to comment, please?
Yes, Councillor, thank you. I guess my role within Hackney the past year has all been about co-production. And I think that is something that we really need to take into account, is that we do have these young people ready and fighting and wanting to be involved, and how we should involve them. And I think that System Influence project that I kind of coordinated with Jenny and Mariona was kind of, it highlighted that there is a massive need to really encourage our young people, to give them the experience and to build them. And I think if there's no young people, there's no service. So we need to take pride in our young people and give them the opportunities that we should be giving them, and not be scared.
Yes,
Yes, Jeanette. Not to be scared of residents, and to hear our stories and to embrace them. Me and Yolanda are here trying to make a change, and we're here telling our stories to inform the service, and we want to just try and improve that through HCVS, through Hackney Quest, through the work that we're doing in Young Futures Commission. I guess just have an open mind, be willing to learn new things, and be willing to connect with younger people that can express themselves in the most creative ways. And we are Hackney, we should be the ones able to do this, and we're starting, and we should continue to do that. So that's kind of what it is: co-production, 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 and co-design, not tokenism. So that's kind of what I want to bring to the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Reese. Sorry, I want you to come in.
Thank you. I don't really want to steal the thunder from that brilliant summary, Reese, but I wanted to say something much more procedural, so I hope that's okay, which is that I just wanted to say in this meeting, I'm going to ask if Jason and Christine, if we could make sure the notes are really clear about actions that are about the way we work. And Reese has just talked about co-production, or Jackie was talking earlier about trust and relationships. So things for all of us as leaders to take on board. We don't need to wait to be in a strategy. So the way we work, but then also Jason and Christine specific, if you could locate for other actions, how they're going to be taken forward, because there's been a lot of rich insight today. And I just wanted to assure people that it's, we need to then follow through and come back on this in future meetings as well, and progress the actions as well. So it's just an ask, and also by doing that, a promise that that's how I think we should present the feedback in the notes, so we can follow up. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sonia. And Sonia has mentioned that one of the things we do with the CRP meeting is that in the next meeting, follow-up meeting or the fourth quarter, there will be a report back of this discussion, how we've taken things forward. So definitely people here today expect there will be a sort of feedback from what we've learned. And in terms of summing up, and thanks Jeanette, in terms of summing up, we've heard over and over again around co-production that leads to co-solution. We've heard about building trust, so that people, our residents, people that are delivering services are comfortable having that consistency in terms of involving young people. And the other one that is quite important that somebody mentioned is around cultural specific services. If we are talking of providing services for a diverse community, cultural or specific services are quite important in terms of what we do. So I think that is a sort of summary that I've got in terms of what we have discussed. A hands went up when I was talking. Or is that it? No, maybe somebody left. So it's now a minute past. In theory, we didn't start until 3 minutes past 5. So I'm still within the 2 hours of this meeting. Can I just say thank you again, in particular to Reese and Yolanda for sharing your stories with us tonight. It was inspiring. Thank you. And for the strength you've had to be here today, where you are with all those challenges in your lives. Thanks very much. And to officers and our community members and voluntary sector, people that contributed. Sakib, thanks very much for tonight. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
See you later. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Christine. Take care.